In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. And despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct right here in the sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent SHR Media studios, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, 2 miles east of the locus of evil on the entire left coast. That would be the Capitol building in Sacramento, California, always spelled with a K, where the locus of evil, it truly is, located loomingly at 10th and L Streets downtown in Sacramento. Late at night, you can hear the screams of common sense dying in those fetid hallways. And then when I get through with the show and I exit that door right over there, you can smell the stench of evil sulfur and brimstone emanating from that edifice. But I gotta tell you this, you gotta belly up to the bar, we've kept your seat, and it's great to see you back. Tonight, it is Tuesday, October 22nd, the year of our Lord 2019. Blaine is gonna be our bartender. Tonight he pours with the best of them. The lava lamp is in fact lighted to my right, your left. And you can listen at the SHR Media Facebook page, YouTube channel. Get into shrmedia.com for the chat room. Gotta tell you, we don't water our drinks just like we don't water our conversation. Politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all right here at the saloon. Nothing is sacred. The speech is free, but the booze is not. All we ask is that you flush the toilet, jiggle the handle, and don't forget to tip your waitress. Whew. That's a lot to say in the small space that the musical intro provides me. Somehow, I gotta manage to cram it all in there. I was lucky this time. I was extremely lucky. Tonight, we have a returning guest, but he should be returning with greater frequency. I gotta tell you, he's been on fire this past week. And that's what caught me is I'm on Twitter. Most of my social media is on Twitter. Most of my interaction is on Twitter. Occasionally, I throw some stuff out onto Facebook. But I'm reading the Reverend Ralph J. Chittims Sr. all over Twitter, all over Facebook, and he has had some great posts, including one tonight that I'm going to tell you about that I wasn't aware of, and we'll chat about everything. So, first, a little intro, because some of you may not know Ralph, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. He's Reverend Ralph J. Chittims Sr. In terms of his CV, he's a graduate of Howard University. He's got his BA in political science. The Maple Springs Baptist Bible College and Seminary. He's got his Master of Arts in Biblical Studies. And the Liberty Baptist Theological Seminary, where he's got his MD, Master of Divinity. He's born and raised in New York City. He's been active in Republican Party politics since about 1988, and he's a former senior vice chairman of the Washington, D.C. GOP. Is this all starting to come back to you a little bit? I bet it is. So, Reverend Ralph is well-versed in media. He's spoken at key press conferences at the National Press Club and a ton of other seminal events in Capitol Hill and nationwide. He's a regular contributor to News One Now with Roland Martin, Lion Chasers with Lonnie Poindexter. His commentaries, I still believe, can be continuing to be found at urbanfamilytalk.com and Sons of Liberty media.com. And finally, we'll have him talk a little bit about this too. He's the principal at Black Elephant Consultants, LLC. BEC, Black Elephant Consultants. My understanding is that is created to address the chasm between the burgeoning Black Christian conservative movement seeking to protect and defend all of their constitutional rights, and members of that community seeking elected office, public officials who enact legislation affecting those liberties, and also the methodology, mechanisms, and inner workings of public policy and political process. That's a mouthful. So essentially, it means that Reverend Ralph J. Chittims Sr. is he's an underachiever, he's got lots of time on his hands, and that's clearly why he's here with us tonight. So, Ralph Chittims, welcome to you, sir, and thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you so much. I'm starting to wonder, who is that guy he's talking about? But it's always a pleasure to be on with you.
Thank you ever so kindly, sir. And as everybody knows, probably 90% of my guests, for whatever reason, maybe it's because everybody on the West Coast dislikes me so much, and not so many people know me on the East Coast, but the bulk of my guests source from the East Coast, and it's about 8:07 right here on the left coast, and that means it's about 11:07 where you are on the East Coast. So thank you, Reverend Ralph, for being here so late and taking the time. I appreciate it, sir.
Oh, absolutely. It is 11:07, and as you were giving your location during the intro, people need to understand that I'm in my home studio, which is 1.5 miles from the United States Capitol here in the swamp. So you and I have a lot in common with the stench of brimstone and leftism and communism and Marxism permeating and percolating around us.
Okay, this is the first ding of the night. Okay, you win. I think you trump me. I'm just on the little capital on the left coast. You're in the big capital on the right coast. So, okay, you win. I concede. I throw up my hands. I concede. Hey, in chat, Ralph is in chat himself. You should be in chat, too. Mike is in chat. Simone's in chat. And Wendy's in chat. So thanks to everybody for being in chat. If you want to be here, go to shrmedia.com. shrmedia.com to listen to the show. And Reverend Ralph, can you tell us, now I'm looking at a couple of your spots on social media, but can you tell us about some of your, maybe some websites that you'd like to tell people about, or maybe some of your social media that you'd like to tell people about?
Well, the easiest way to reach me, honestly, is I'm on Twitter at UrbRed, URBRED, and also on Facebook, Urban Red. And you mentioned Black Elephant Consultants, and that's a regular LLC, but Urban Red was created after the 2018 elections as a C4 to help turn urban America purple and ultimately red by focusing our efforts on electing down-ballot Republican conservative, let me change that, down-ballot conservative candidates in urban America.
Okay.
Because most people don't understand that it's the local candidates that do more harm and can do more good than any state level or federal candidate. So we're trying to get the door catchers and the aldermen and the mayors and the council members and the recorder of deeds elected, because those are the ones who make those day-to-day decisions that affect your life way more than any U.S. senator, president, or even a state representative. So Urban Red is the one that's really the most active organization right now, and it's a C4. So if anyone is interested in donating, you can do so. The reason it's a C4 is your identity remains anonymous in this day and age, which is a good thing.
Yes.
However, you don't tax deduction for the contribution.
You make an excellent point, and I'll go right here and say it out loud. You talk about all politics is local, and I think that's what it distills down to. And talk about politics. Have we got a ton of politics to talk about tonight? And I'll try to get through this rather rapidly because I'd like to get into the meat of, there's so many topics to talk about and discuss with you tonight. But I want to point out, in terms of all politics is local, one of the SHR Media stars, they have their own show. It's Shannon and Mike on the Right Way in the morning. Shannon Wright is running for mayor of Baltimore next year. Mm-hmm. And that is a massive, massive campaign. Takes a lot of wattage, a lot of time, a lot of hours, effort, work. I threw $100 at her. You can get on the internet. I can't think of the website offhand, but if you do something like Right for Baltimore, WRIGHT, all politics is local. If you're in the Baltimore area and the mayor can ultimately affect you in Baltimore, go quick like a bunny. Go donate to her. Go support her. Go help her. Maybe you don't have any cash. Maybe you just want to support her. All politics is local. Shannon Wright for mayor of Baltimore.
Absolutely. A wonderful candidate.
You bet.
And as crazy as it sounds, that race is winnable because the citizens in Baltimore are finally waking up to the fact that they have been completely missed and underrepresented by the Democrats since the 1950s. And they're starting to wake up. And it's a beautiful thing for me to witness.
Baltimore is kind of coming back, I sense. You're on the East Coast, I'm not. But there have been some efforts to try to spiff up Baltimore, to beautify it. And when Reverend Ralph says that Baltimore is winnable, for Shannon Wright, it's winnable. Yes, it is. It's local. It can be done. It can be done. And
but Al Sharpton did one of those on the street interviews that he asked to do from time to time, and he was verbally accosted by the citizens of Baltimore as a do-nothing race hustler. And I was talking about Democrats, black Democrats in Baltimore, verbally accosting Al Sharpton on the street during a press conference and calling him out as a race hustler. See, that's a quantum shift in thinking.
That's oh my God. That's another major reason that I have you and a lot of other black conservatives on is my voice is small. My exposure is, 5, 6, 7,000 people or so. It's not massive by any extent. But the reason I want to have you on, and other people need to realize that there is such an actual thing as a black conservative in America, and people are making inroads, and it's way past due time for this sort of thing to occur. And I submit, Ralph Chittum's, do you think, sir, that a fraction, a molecule of this awareness would occur had not Donald Trump won the presidency? In other words, had Hillary Clinton won the presidency, would the covers and the Band-Aids be ripped off all the festering wounds that still exist?
Oh, no. If Hillary Clinton had won, it would be business as usual, and the America that we love and that we know would have disappeared overnight. It would be gone. We would have been swallowed up in a sea of Marxism, socialism, and America would be gone. Donald Trump was the right man at the right time that America needed in order to start to right the ship. And Donald Trump, and I've said it before, and I'll go on record with your show tonight, Donald Trump is going to get reelected, guaranteed, and he will probably take at least 45 states.
Folks, you heard it here first in terms of predictions. And Ralph Chittum's, you're kind of in my head a little bit because I was going to get to that in a bit, but you went there first. So mark it in your calendars. October 22nd, Ralph Chittum says next year it's going to be Trump. And I do believe that as well. This is an interesting point, and I believe this is, and I'm going to ask you after I play this audio cut, Ralph, I believe this is the fundamental foundation from which the Democrats, as I call them, this is the fount from which all their waters flow. And thank goodness that there was a Texas representative who was sufficiently honest, Representative Al Green, when he made this, in retrospect, a bit of an astonishing statement, but it's absolutely true.
Are you concerned that impeachment talk may actually help the president's reelection?
I'm concerned that if we don't impeach this president, he will get reelected. If we don't impeach him, he will say he has been vindicated. He will say the Democrats had an overwhelming majority in the House and they didn't take up impeachment. He will say that we had a constitutional duty to do it if it was there and we didn't. He will say that he has been vindicated. But here's what I say.
Enough of you, Al. Yes, that's what he will say. But Al, he spilled the beans. Basically what he said is we got to roll on impeachment because otherwise our major fear is that he'll be elected, reelected. And it'll only get worse for us.
But here's the mathematics that they haven't considered. If they move forward with this kangaroo court of an impeachment behind closed doors, without it being bipartisan, which would be the first time in American history impeachment was taken up on a partisan basis,
yes,
with the minority party not having any input. Even if they are successful in impeaching him in the House, that is going to launch Donald Trump back into the White House. Period. End of discussion. Because his supporters and even some Democrats who see this for what it is are going to vote for him simply to uphold the Constitution.
I completely concur with that. They're talking about impeachment. And I believe, Ralph Chittims, I'd like to ask you this after I make my statement. I believe that the Democrats never somehow in their minds transitioned from November 8th of 2016 to November 9th of 2016, and that they still, to this day, cannot believe that OMB, Orange Man Bad, Donald John Trump, the guy with the dead orange cat on his head, is the president of the United States of America. And for that reason, he must be impeached. Impeachment talk from Al Green right there in audio started almost immediately. Immediately. And yet, wasn't the battle cry of Hillary, and I love this because you brought this story and I was not aware of this story, and we're going to go over it very soon. Hillary Clinton said that she won the popular vote and that the Electoral College stole the presidency from her. And yet, today, you made me aware of this article about Justin Trudeau. So apparently, just now, and thanks again, Ralph, just now from nationalreview.com, the article says Justin Trudeau just lost the popular vote. So will outrage ensue? North of the border, Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party will form a new government despite, listen to this, despite being a minority that captured not even 1/3 of the nation's votes, 33.1%. So if he is installed in Canada, then where's the hue and cry about this? And Ralph Chittims, thank you, sir, for bringing this to my attention.
Yeah, it's pure hypocrisy on the part of the Democrats. You know, but also here's something else with Trudeau that people really need to wrap their heads around. Barack Obama endorsed Trudeau.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Trudeau of the multiple blackface scandals.
Yes.
Trudeau.
Yes.
Now, you take Trudeau in Canada with the multiple blackface scandals, and let's move down to the Commonwealth of Virginia. Ralph Northam, with his just 2 or 3 blackface scandals. You have the Attorney General with his blackface scandals, and the Democrats, black and white, are all falling over themselves, you know, giving forgiveness and, oh, they didn't mean it. But Donald Trump, uses the term lynching in reference to the current impeachment proceedings, which is the same language that Nadler used in reference to the Clinton impeachment, which Clinton used in relation to the Clinton impeachment, which Hillary Clinton used in relation to the Benghazi investigation. But now all of a sudden, Donald Trump needs to be vilified and castigated. But all of these guys on the left can do all of this egregious stuff, but they all get a pass. See, that's why when the Democrats criticize Donald Trump, I tell them to shut the hell up because they have no integrity.
Another reason, Ralph Chittum's, why I love you being on the show. It's like you're in my head tonight, because don't you think, sir, that those questions were not in my little pile of notes here that I was going to discuss with you tonight, and you brought them up early. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Now, if we deign to talk about impeachment, one of the things I think you have to ask is, well, where's the evidence? We've seen the transcript. We don't have it on video. We don't have it on audio. We do, however, have something else on audio and video about another individual who was working a quid pro quo situation with Ukraine, as Trump is accused of. Oh, wait, that would be Joe Biden.
Going over convincing our team, or others, to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. Yeah. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. Really? They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
Okay, stop. Solid. Folks, you know what he's talking about. This is Vice President Joe Biden running for president now. Who was the government, or where was the government whistleblower on this thing? So this is Joe Biden bragging live on camera that he got the Ukrainian prosecutor, who at the same time was prosecuting his son Hunter Biden for $1 billion fraud. He got the prosecutor fired by threatening to take away Ukraine's $1 billion loan guarantee. Ralph Chittum's, that's on audio and that's on video.
Right, but let's clear up one little thing. He wasn't investigating Hunter Biden. He was investigating the oil and gas company on which Hunter Biden was a paid board member.
Oh, true. Yes.
So I mean, honestly, that's a technical difference without a difference. Because if you're a paid board member and they're investigating the company, they're technically investigating you. But lest we be accused of doing what the left does, let's make sure that we put it out there so that everybody understands exactly what was going on. But there is the clear quid pro quo. The then president of the United States pressuring the foreign government to cancel an investigation which would have a negative impact on his son. That's a clear quid pro quo. Why has Joe Biden not been prosecuted?
Ralph Chittum, could it be any more clear than that? That's why I love the internet, because it archives lots of stuff that can be accessed in the future. But the sad thing about impeachment is that now, let's see, this past Sunday, Chris Wallace made this statement, and I'm curious what your thoughts would be since you're in the D.C. area, Ralph Chittum's. Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday said that he had what he termed a well-connected Washington Republican who told him that there is a 20% chance that Republicans will vote to remove President Donald Trump in an impeachment trial. Is this Chris Wallace blowing smoke, Or is this a possibility, Ralph Chittims?
No, he was probably talking to Mitt Romney's Twitter page, that Pierre page.
Right.
That's where he got that from.
Oh.
Look, that's not going to happen.
You can't write, Ralph. You can't write stuff like that. You can't write it. It writes itself.
I literally that's something. What's his name? Pierre. What was his name?
Oh,
Pierre. Look, Pierre something.
Yeah. It's
no,
just
that's the high-ranking Republican. That's Mitt Romney's nom de plume. Pierre, whatever it is. Yeah, no. No. Donald Trump, like I said, Donald Trump is going to get reelected. Whether and here's the truth of the matter: the Democrats are not going to pull the pin on the impeachment hearings. They're not going to do it because number one, they don't want to put their members who won in swing districts in peril by having them have to go on record supporting impeaching the president when the president is going to win those states. All they want to do is talk about impeachment to keep the waters stirred up, to keep the waters muddy, but they are not going to pull the trigger on impeachment. That's why every chance I get, I'll tell Democrats, I double dare you to actually pull the pin on the impeachment proceedings. I dare you.
That's almost word for word what my former Congress critter, Tom McClintock, said about a month and a half or 2 months ago to Nancy Pelosi. He said, in almost those exact same words, Ralph Chittims, I double dog dare you to go ahead with this impeachment, and we'll see just how this plays out for you. But here's another thing. Let's see. We got about 3 more minutes before the bottom of the hour break. I think I can squeeze in one more question for Ralph here. Jason Chaffetz said recently, within the past week or so, that the House has already taken 3 votes on impeachment. Pelosi came out last week and said that she's going to delay a vote. Chaffetz came on and said, well, that's incorrect in and of itself. They've already taken 3. She hasn't got the numbers, and that's why she's not going to take a 4th vote. Ralph Chittims, have you heard anything about that?
No, but it doesn't surprise me. Because honestly, even if they did have the numbers, they know Nancy Pelosi is a politician. She's a partisan hack.
Yes.
And she said if they take that vote and they have the numbers and that vote has to be publicly released, she knows that there are at least 20 to 30 House Democrats who are going to lose their reelection bid because they have gone along with this witch hunt.
Oh, but wait, but wait. Isn't it Nancy Pelosi that said during some kind of a weekend show a couple of weeks ago, if we lose the House, I don't care because we're doing the right thing. To me, Ralph Chittims, that sounded like she's making excuses early.
But she's not going to do it because she is not going to be the person responsible for Democrats losing control of the House, letting Donald Trump get reelected, and letting Republicans maintain control of the Senate. They do not want Republicans to control those 3 branches of government. And they are going to do everything in their power to make sure they hold on to the House, which means they are not going to pull the trigger on impeachment hearings. They're just going to talk about it to dirty up the waters, to get people excited, to try to get people emotionally jacked up. But they are not going to pull the trigger because she knows that they would lose the House.
We're going to go into politics. When we come back, we're going to go into blacks in America. We're going to go into religion. We're going to go into an area that I don't think, folks, you're going to be particularly comfortable with. We're going to talk about right to life. We're going to talk about people being pro-life. We're going to talk about, one of the first things when we come back after the break is I want to talk to Ralph Chittims about poverty, and this is a fact, in the United States was actually going down for Black Americans as well, until Lyndon Johnson decided, well, I'm just going to go ahead and declare war on that. We're talking to Reverend Ralph J. Chittims Sr. right here in the Saloon. We'll be back with that question and a bunch of others right after this. Please don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Shannon Wright of The Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Mike's not here, so I gotta talk fast. You gotta join us. Fall season. Getting ready to start up with a whole bunch of new stuff. News and food and politics and sports and entertainment and a whole bunch of stuff. But wait, Mike's coming. I gotta go. Remember, Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. Make sure you tune in.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America, one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian sackheads Clint, plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sackheads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty voided Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, the first half hour in this 2-hour Festivus for the rest of us is gone. And for the first hour, we have the distinct honor of having the Reverend Ralph J. Chittum Sr. on the show. Now, Ralph has been on twice before, and we did a lot of getting to know Ralph, but now we're into the politics, and we're going to continue on with the politics. I asked Ralph before the break, I'm going to be talking about this article. This is from the Foundation for Economic Education. And the headline is this, and I want Ralph's take. It says, poverty in the United States was plummeting until Lyndon Johnson declared a war. I was living during that time, and it was literally that phrase he called the war on poverty. One of the more elemental observations about economics is that the nation's prosperity is determined, in fact, by quantity and quality of labor and capital, and those factors of production are combined to generate national income. Well, there was the welfare state's effect on the poor, and it's this. During the 20 years before the war on poverty was funded, the portion of the nation living in poverty had dropped to 14.7% from 32.1%. Since 1966, the first year with a significant increase in anti-poverty spending, the poverty rate reported by the Census Bureau has been virtually unchanged. Transfers targeted to low-income families increased in real dollars from an average of $3,070 per person in 1965 to, wait for it, folks, before you sit down, $34,093, I should say, in 2016. Transfers now constitute 84.2% of the disposable income of the poorest quintile of American households and 57.8% of the disposable income of lower middle income households. Ralph Chittums, how do you think that might have affected blacks in America and the once definitely nuclear black family?
Well, it decimated urban America. But let's also understand very clearly that it decimated a huge portion of white America as well.
Yes.
Now, what Johnson did in the 60s is he put on steroids what the government started back in the 1930s. Because people need to understand the history of this thing. Back in the 1930s is when the social workers were first instructed to go into the homes of women who were getting assistance and look for the presence of a man. And if there was a male presence in that home, then the woman would start losing benefits. The foundation for Johnson's Great Society in the 60s was laid in the 30s. What he did in the 60s was ratcheted up to the point where they just didn't even hide the fact anymore and said, the government is now going to be your daddy. The government is now going to be your husband. Take all these men, throw them out of the house. We don't want them. We don't need them. And that is what has caused us to be where we are right now. And I'm going to say something, and a lot of Republicans get mad at me, but the most prophetic politician of the day in the 1960s was Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who predicted exactly what was going to happen in urban America and in communities like Appalachia if Johnson's Great Society legislation went forward. He predicted the complete, utter destruction of the nuclear family, the explosion of the welfare state, the explosion of criminal activity, the explosion of drug use. He was a prophet.
One thing that you should know, folks, we're talking to Ralph Chittums. One thing you should know, folks, about Daniel Patrick Moynihan is that he was a classic liberal. He wasn't a leftist, and he was an individual that you could still bargain with and speak to and have a conversation with. I wasn't aware of that specific point, Ralph Chittums, But I do know a little bit about him because, again, I was living during that time, and I started paying attention, I should say, to politics right around that time. And so would it be logical, reasonable to say that it's the Democrats that are essentially responsible for the downfall and the creation of greater poverty? Black, white, no matter your paint job, Democrats did not lift people out of poverty. They kept them in it. Would that be accurate?
That's completely accurate, and anyone who tries to argue it is a fool. Because the numbers bear it out. Poverty was on the decline before Johnson stepped in and kicked the husbands and the fathers out of the home. In the 1960s, 70% of urban American children were living in a nuclear family, mothers and fathers. Post-Johnson, the numbers have completely reversed, where 75% are now living in single-parent homes, typically headed by a mother, and in some communities, that number is at 90%. And that is a direct result of the Democrats' policies of pushing men out of the home and incentivizing single motherhood.
Folks, listen to what Ralph is saying. 90% is obscene.
Some communities, 90%.
It's difficult to comprehend. I don't doubt the statistic, but it's difficult to comprehend. However, not so much when you consider that the Democrats and leftists have had this amount of time to pull us kicking and screaming to this point in time. Yet, there is a contrast. Here's an article from the Daily Signal. It says Black Americans are doing great under Trump. This was written by Star Parker. The August jobs report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows more great news for all Americans, and particularly for Black Americans. The nation's unemployment rate of 3.7% puts it near the lowest ever in the last half century. Black unemployment is at an all-time low of 5.5%.
Ever.
Wait. How could this happen under OMB? Why didn't this occur under our first black president, Bill Clinton, and our second actual real black president, Barack Hussein Obama? I don't get it.
Well, see now we're going to get in trouble, because people need to understand Barack Obama was not black. Barack Obama is the Webster definition of an African American.
Okay.
And African Americans have a completely different worldview and psychology from Black Americans. Everything Barack Obama did is consistent with being an African American, which in very real ways is completely antithetical to being a Black American. Barack Obama didn't give a hoot and a holler about Black America. How many times did he say, I'm not the president of Black America, I'm the president of the United States? And he proved it because he never did a single thing that benefited exclusively Black Americans. He did things that exclusively promoted homosexuality, that exclusively promoted illegals, but he never did anything that exclusively helped Black people. And that's because he views everything through the prism of being a true African American and not a Black American.
That's an interesting distinction and a very interesting point. I found an article. I bookmarked it because I knew that I was going to be speaking to you, and I found it about a day or so ago. This is from thyblackman.com, Brotherhood at its best. The title of this thing, and again, I'd like your input, Ralph Chittum's, is Liberals Continue to View Blacks as Ignorant. I'm amazed that conservatives continually get hit with the racist label, even though it's liberals who spew racism at every turn in their engagement with the black community. Implicit in liberalism is that blacks are too dumb or too ignorant to make decisions that are in their own best interest. Therefore, liberals use the power of the government to force liberalism upon the black community. True or false, or somewhere in between, Ralph Chittims?
What I would say is what the Democrats have learned how to do is to use emotion to drive behavior. And I've said it, and I'm on record because I've even written about this, is Black America has been the unwitting participant in the greatest Pavlovian experiment in the history of social science. And this is what I mean by that. There was a time when you would yell racism, you would yell discrimination, and you would show it to black people, and they would respond to it. Yes, that's racist. Yes, that's discrimination. And just like Pavlov's dogs, after a while, all you have to do is holler racism, holler discrimination, and the black people will respond even if you don't show them the racism. So that's why every election cycle, Democrats holler racism, Democrats holler discrimination, because they know black people have been the unwitting participants in this Pavlovian experiment, and they will in large part respond to the stimulus even though there's no factual basis behind it.
I'd like to, if we can, transition now. Let's see, we've got about 15 more minutes. I'd like to transition now into religion. You're a reverend, a pastor, and I quoted all the various, you've got your MD, Master of Divinity. So I know that you know what you're talking about in terms of Christianity. I found an interesting point, an interesting site called LifeSite News. And I'm very curious because this hits a lot of what I believe that you've been talking about on social media this past week and the week before. This is an article that it says, if Christians don't personally engage in politics, it's all over for America. Is that true? Can Christians just hold politics at arm's length, and once they get into a building, that's it? Politics just don't cross the door anymore. Or is that no longer true? Ralph Chittims.
No, Christians have to engage in politics. We have to. Christ himself, Jesus the Christ, engaged in politics. When he threw the money changers out of the temple, that was as much political as it was religious. And what we need to understand is the Muslims in this country right now are trying to amass 5,000 of their believers to run for office across this country. What do you think is going to happen if they get a critical mass of their believers in elected office?
It comes back to this, and what I've said with regard to, it could be Muslims, it could be Mexicans, it could be the importation of fill in the blank, but particularly with regard to Islam, which this is a topic for another day, but I'll be charitable. Let's just say I don't have a positive outlook on Islam. I've said for years, Islam is as Islam does. Now, to get back to my original point, demography is prophecy. So what you've said, Ralph Chittims, is that Muslims are making a very concerted effort to ensure that they insert themselves into local politics. That's a plan, and it's a plot. And trust me, if we learn nothing from Europe, we have historical Alzheimer's in the United States. We can't look across the sea to Europe to see what's occurring to Europe right now. And you, Ralph Chittims, made an excellent point by that.
And when you look at every empire, every republic throughout human history, no empire was ever destroyed by an outside influence. Every empire was all destroyed from within.
Yes.
And what we're seeing right now is the concerted effort to lay the foundation to destroy the United States of America using the very rights tools that have been put in place, which have made America great, which in the wrong hands will prove its undoing. And if the Christian faith, if we don't get out and if we don't vote and if we don't put moral men and women in office who understand that our rights do not come from the government, that our rights come from Almighty God, and it's the government's responsibility to make sure that those rights are not infringed upon. If we do not have Christians in office with that basic understanding, we will lose it all.
We will lose it all, because that's the fundamental precept, as Ralph Chittum's just said, behind the entire U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. We get our rights from God, not from government. And that is...
Islam, their rights come from within their governmental structure.
Yes. Yes, I've gone to the point where I've said that I'm not convinced that Islam is a religion. It's a police, militaristic, societal, budgetary formula for ensuring that Sharia law and their ways are plastered upon everyone eventually, because that's the ultimate goal of Islam. We got here. I'm sorry, Ralph, go ahead.
Look at the history of Islam. Islam started as a religion. It started as religion. But as it grew, it morphed into a political power structure.
Yes.
And the problem with Islam is Christianity and Judaism, we have to be honest, we went through a period of reformation within our faith. Islam has never gone through that period of reformation and is still in its warlike infancy.
It's interesting, Ralph Chittum's, that you brought this up, because I found an article also in preparation for tonight's show, the headline of which says, this is from ChristianHeadlines.com. Supreme Court to consider reviewing the case of a high schooler in America, in the United States of America, who was forced to recite Islamic conversion prayer. The case of a Christian high school student who was forced to write the Islamic creed at school is slated to come before a U.S. Supreme Court conference on October the 11th. The conference is a list of petitions that the Supreme Court reviews for consideration. Then the court decides whether or not to take the case. It's here. It's now.
Yep. Yeah. And our public school system, our teachers union, and prior to Donald Trump's administration, our own the Federal Department of Education were complicit in what would ultimately be the overthrow of the Republic of the United States of America and have it replaced by a caliphate.
Well, and if you don't think that Sharia law is exactly what Islam is looking for, look up Taqiyya, look up Sharia law, and then educate yourselves and decide if you want to live under this system and you want your children and your grandchildren to live under this system.
Right. So they're forcing children under the guise of history to recite a prayer that Islamists say the minute you recite it, you have renounced any other religion and you are now, a practitioner of Islam. But yet and still in these same high schools, you can't even teach or even mention Christmas or Easter.
No, exactly.
But they're allowing these children to be converted by force, coerced by the government. And when you say someone's coerced by the government, let's understand very clearly, we're talking about at the point of a gun to be converted to Islam under false pretenses of we're just teaching history. Oh, no, not under my watch.
Gosh, we have 6 minutes left. I wanted to at least get through this topic, and I wanted to play. I wanted to play at least this massively impactful audio cut, which is about 4 minutes long. Before we God, I'm torn. Ralph Chittum's, I'd like to get through the next 4 to 5 stories to at least cover this. They primarily revolve around abortion. If it takes to the top of the hour, would it be possible for me to hold you over the top of the hour for maybe another 5 minutes to see if I can get the rest of this in? Would that be okay with you, sir?
That would be fine.
Okay. Because I in the process of being here tonight, well, let me back up, since I know I've got a little bit of a cushion now. There are various types of conservatives. There are budgetary conservatives, there are military conservatives, there are societal conservatives. Abortion did not really make it on one of my scopes all that much. It wasn't an issue that I would continue to press until I was educated in terms of visual and audio cues from a couple of movies. One was Unplanned. The other one, and good luck finding that anymore. Then there was another one called Gosnell. And particularly after watching that, I took a very serious re-examination of my own self. And I don't talk about this very much because I don't go with societal topics a lot on the show until I got to that point. And it was a personal, I can't really call it a tipping point, but it was a point that I reached where I finally realized I can't not address this issue anymore.
And that's what happens. It has to become personal.
It's something that I can't just not talk about. I'm leading to, and I've got 3 stories that I'd like to talk to you and to everybody about in terms of abortion and Planned Parenthood. And then I guess tonight this will culminate in probably, and I have to pre-warn you and everyone else, I played this once before, and I don't think people were listening. I have, and I will warn everyone again when I get to the point that I'm playing this. A doctor who is speaking before Congress about specifically what occurs during an abortion. Now, there are no charts. There are no pictures. There are no photographs. It's just this guy sitting in front of, and I don't even know offhand what committee it was. But if this isn't the most visceral 4 minutes you'll ever hear, I don't know what is.
It's purely satanic.
I could not.
It is.
I couldn't conclude. I can make no other conclusion than that after these stories and listening to this audio cut. We're not going to have time to get there before the break. Now I've got about a minute before the break.
Like I said, I'll stick around. I have no problem.
Okay. The first story that I want to get to is, remember, folks, and Ralph Chittum's, Planned Parenthood said, abortions, that's just a small percentile of what we do. Mostly we are here, we exist for women's health. Then there's an article from Breitbart.com that says Planned Parenthood shuts down 2 Ohio clinics that don't perform abortions. Well, that's wrong. We were told that they do a lot more than abortions. Planned Parenthood is closing down 2 Ohio clinics that provide birth control, STI, and cancer screenings, but not abortions. Officials at Planned Parenthood Southwestern Ohio announced the organization is going to shut down its clinics in Springdale and Western Hills on September 20th. Well, they've already been shut down by now. Well, how can they do that? We're told that It's the clinics themselves, not abortions, that support Planned Parenthood. Well, if that's true, what's the need to shut down these clinics? Because abortion doesn't fund Planned Parenthood. Just ask them, and they'll tell you. We're here tonight with Ralph Chittims. It's even going to take me a couple of minutes in this promo to settle down. We're going to have a couple more articles to talk about. And then, if you still believe in abortion after listening to this audio cut after the break, I honestly, I really don't know what to say. I'll be back with Ralph Chittims right after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Shannon Wright of The Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Mike's not here, so I gotta talk fast. You gotta join us. Fall season. Getting ready to start up with a whole bunch of new stuff. News and food and politics and sports and entertainment and a whole bunch of stuff. But wait, Mike's coming. I gotta go. Remember, Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. Make sure you tune in.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America, one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's
of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian sackheads Clint plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sackheads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty voided Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk, Bobcat, Saloon radio show, live and direct right here from the sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent SHR Media Studios, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. For the first hour, we were lucky enough to have Ralph J. Chittums Sr. on. And again, Ralph, thank you ever so kindly for being here tonight. I have a couple more stories, and then we'll culminate with an audio cut. After that, the rest of the show in the second hour will be about the American media maggots and what it is that they're not telling you about Donald John Trump, the guy with the dead orange cat on his head, in terms of, you know what, there's a lot of great stuff that he's been doing for the United States of America. No matter your paint job, it really doesn't matter to him. Ralph J. Chittums, let me ask you, sir, is Donald John Trump a racist?
No, he's never been. And when people tell me he's a racist, I respond to them was, when did he become a racist? You know, was he a racist when he helped Jennifer Hudson and her family quietly, you know, without any fanfare? Was he a racist when Al Sharpton was kissing his butt? Was he a racist when he got the Lifetime Achievement Award from the NAACP?
Yes.
Was he a racist when Barack Obama wrote that everybody wants to grow up and be like Donald Trump? Was Donald Trump a racist when Hillary Clinton said that people like Donald Trump should be president of the United States? When exactly did Donald Trump become a racist?
Charlottesville. Ralph Chittums, I did an entire show consisting of 1 full hour in terms of an examination, and I played every audio cut I could find about Charlottesville and the truth about what Donald Trump actually said. Not just snippets and pieces. It's a lie. It's a
media lie.
Yes, it is an abject and outright lie. But here's something that's... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Donald Trump said, in reference to the legal rally on Saturday, that there were good people on both sides. That statement that he made was reference to the legal authorized rally on Saturday. Regarding those idiots who were running around with torches on Friday night hollering, "Jew shall not replace us," Donald Trump vilified those guys.
And
but the media took the statement from Saturday, made it seem like he was talking about Friday, simply to drive the false narrative in the fake news that Donald Trump is a bigot.
And after that, refuted racism numerous times. I have all the audio cuts about that. We don't have time to play it here, but yes, it was a naked, bald, abject lie.
Yeah, because they understand, going back to a previous segment, the Pavlovian response of most urban blacks is you holler racism, and they'll do whatever the Democrats tell them to do, mindlessly. Because we have proven over the past 50 years that works. The Democrats don't have to do anything for urban America. They don't have to do anything for black people. They can make all kind of promises, renege on every promise, but come election season, when they holler racism and point at a Republican, those black folks will go in and vote for the same Democrats who have been enslaving them since the 1960s.
It's an untenable situation. It's an unwinnable situation. And just as Ralph Chittums indicates, it's turning around. It's turning around. I have had...
And it took Donald Trump to do it.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Because, again, the point being, if we had Hillary Clinton as president, none of this, if any, very little, if any, would have come to light. We would not be understanding what it is, the forces and the power that truly is arrayed against the real good people of the United States of America.
Right. The deep state would still be operating. And here's what's even more insidious about this. Even if we had elected a Republican, if we had elected a Mitt Romney, the deep state would still be operating. If we had elected Jeb Bush, the deep state would still be operating because all of those guys are members of the deep state and are, in fact, globalists.
You said a mouthful on that, and just all the stuff that we could get into with regard to Mitt Romney and Meb Bushney and all of the people that I promised I would never vote for again. Not another Bush, not another Clinton, not another Romney. I don't care who you are. Never again.
Yep. Absolutely. It took someone from the outside. See, what people outside of Washington don't understand is we have this thing in Washington that we affectionately call the K Street Shuffle. And K Street is where all the lobbyists work.
Okay.
And here's how the K Street Shuffle works. When your party is in the White House, you get a job in the administration.
Okay.
When your party is not in the White House, you get a job on K Street with one of the lobbying companies.
Okay.
So it's like you're playing musical chairs. It's the K Street Shuffle.
Okay.
So Donald Trump comes in. He's not a real Republican. So he's not a part of the deep state. So the Republicans who have been on K Street now didn't have any place to go inside of the administration because now K Street was for the Democrats because they no longer occupied the White House. See, that's why Democrats and Republicans who both hate Donald Trump is he messed up the money train. He messed up.
Oh my God, you can't poop all over the money train tracks like OMB. He's cut off our livelihood.
That's exactly what he did. He cut off the K Street Shuffle. And so now people who just, they've been flipping back and forth from K Street to the executive branch, from the executive branch back to K Street. They've been doing this for the past 50 years. And here comes this outsider from New York, and he busts up the shuffle. Why? That's why Romney hates him. That's why the Democrats hate him. That's why the Bushes hate him. That's why the establishment in the Democrat Party and the Republican Party hate him. He has messed up the shuffle.
Wow. That's almost me worth a post just on that. The K Street Shuffle. That's illuminating. Makes perfect sense. Placed in...
Right, but in Washington, D.C., you're not going to know that.
Yes. True. Absolutely true.
Yeah. But that's how the game is played here. Because, you know, why are all of these guys, Democrats and Republicans, how is it that all of them have children who are on the board of directors of a Ukrainian oil company? How the hell does that happen?
Oh, come on. Ralph Chittum's, that's just a coinky dink. It just happened.
That's the shuffle. That's the shuffle. Because everybody's getting paid out of the same trough, and nobody talks because it's the Mutual Blackmail Society of America. That's why Hillary Clinton said, if this son of a bitch wins, we are all going to hang. And when she said all, she didn't mean just Democrats. She meant everybody in the establishment, Democrats and Republicans.
I've called them for the longest time. People call them rhinos. I call the GOP members of that side establishacks. They're hacks, and they've been in the establishment for quite a long time. They go down to the Hawk and Dove bar at the end of the day, slap each other on the back, order more rounds of drinks, and then ha-ha and hee-hee and hoo-hoo about having ripped off the taxpayers of the United States of America. That's a truth.
That's the deep state.
Here's another truth.
And honestly, I don't think Donald Trump really understood the depth of the deep state when he ascended into the Oval Office. I think he walked in naive about exactly what he was facing.
I'm going to completely agree with that, Ralph Chittims, for kind of an odd reason. If you remember, Barack Hussein Obama made all sorts of mouth music before being installed. And then after sitting in the White House, some of his things changed. I'm submitting that once he became a regular consumer of the PDB, which is the President's Daily Brief, a little bit of his worldview changed, and he hadn't anticipated that. Just as you indicate with Donald John Trump, that his worldview had to change a bit because he was not aware of how deeply entrenched is the deep state. And only now, he is critically aware of that now.
Right. Now he is, but when he first got into the Oval Office, he was very naive about the enemy that he was facing.
And how would you like to wake up, boys and girls, like Donald Trump, with so many forces on every level arrayed against you by the hour and by the minute? It doesn't give up. It will never stop. It will consume you if you let it. And then you wonder why he gets maybe a little bit persnickety or rude, knowing that these people, if they could kill him, they would. He cannot exist in their world. He cannot exist in their world.
No, but see, what people don't understand about, I'm from New York originally. I was born and raised in Manhattan. I was born in 1960, so I grew up, in New York during the Trump era. What you're seeing from Trump's personality is what we've grown up in New York being accustomed to from Trump. He's brash, he's braggadocious, he's a bull in the china closet. But here's something else that the Democrats miscalculated. They have basically told Donald Trump, it doesn't matter what you do, we are going to oppose you.
And that's true. That's absolutely true. Look at everything that they've done. You have to understand, folks, that what Ralph Chittum says is true. The Democrats don't give a crap about the United States. If you have to pay, if you are penalized, if you are disciplined, if you are punished as the result of whatever it is that the Democrats decide to do, it's all in the good name of shooting down Donald Trump. The results, the spillage, the spillover, friendly fire that results, if some of you die because of that, that's okay, because our focus is removing Donald Trump no matter what. Period.
Right. But now remember, Mitch McConnell said in Barack Obama's first term, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure Barack Obama is a one-term president. Right?
Right.
So Barack Obama, in essence, was operating within the same system that Donald Trump was operating under. What Barack Obama did was he turned into a Class A wuss as president. What Donald Trump did, as opposed to what Barack Obama did, Donald Trump said, okay, it doesn't matter what I do, you're going to oppose what I do? Okay, I'm going to do exactly what the hell I want to do, and I don't give a damn what you think about it.
Yes.
What the Democrats did is they made Donald Trump the most powerful modern-day president because they told him, you may as well do what you want because it doesn't matter. We're going to oppose it anyway. They have created their own Frankenstein monster.
That's an extremely insightful point, Ralph Chittims, because what it has done is it has basically cleared the air for Donald Trump to realize no matter what I do. So if those are the operating rules, those are the rules of engagement set down by the Democrats, then I'm essentially free and clear to do anything that I want. And so now that I'm given carte blanche, I'm really going to double down and push back, and I'm going to do it for what I consider to be the best things in terms of America. That's a really great point.
Right, now flip this back to Barack Obama and being black versus African American. So Mitch McConnell tells the world, we're going to make sure that Barack Obama is a one-term president, right? If Barack Obama had the stones that Donald Trump has, remember, in Barack Obama's first 2 years in office, Democrats were in the House, the Senate, and the White House.
Yes.
If they wanted to, in the first 2 years of Barack Obama's presidency, they could have made Italian the national language of the United States, and there wasn't a damn thing anybody could have done about it.
And they had the votes to do it. Here's another...
And what did he do for black people? Nothing.
Ralph Chittims, you opened up a door, and I'm going to walk right through it. Let's go back to George Bush. Folks, you remember when, at one point, the Republicans, just as Ralph Chittims indicated here, like Barack Obama, I mean, we owned George Bush. We owned the Oval Office. We owned the House, and we owned the Senate. And what did we do with that power? I'll wait.
And you'll be waiting a long time.
Yeah, I will. And so, let me ask you, Ralph Chittims. We're going to get back to abortion, but you opened that door. By gosh, I'm going to walk through that, baby. What do you think that Donald Trump will do when the triumvirate comes over to his point? In other words, yep, he's in the Oval Office, and he owns the House, and he owns the Senate. Do you think that he will hesitate to wield power as much as he can within certain limitations, like the House and the Senate?
Absolutely not. Because he will clearly understand these are the rules. The Democrats have created this Frankenstein monster. They have given me all this power, and I'm going to use it. And the reason he's not afraid to use it is he spent most of his years fighting in the business trenches in New York City, where he not only had to fight with the corrupt regulators inside of the city and state government, he had to fight with the mafia, with the unions, and with everybody else. And if you think that a few politicians up on Capitol Hill are going to scare him more than the mafia and the unions and the Teamsters in New York City, you have another thing coming.
That, again, Ralph Chittims, thanks for being here tonight. That's a point. Those are perspectives that are well needed right here, and another reason that I'm so thankful that I had you here tonight. I want to transition to the final two stories and then my cut, because I understand it. Now we're after midnight. Now it's about 12:23, and I'm sure that someone may be eyeballing you right now as to why the heck you're... Oh, let me ask you this, since I just thought about this. Ralph Chittims, you used to have a radio show on SHR. Have you thought about perhaps coming back?
I have thought about coming back. It's just a matter of trying to fit that into my schedule.
Okay.
Because remember, I stopped doing the show when I ran for office because it became sort of a legal issue,
right, with
me being a candidate and hosting my own show. But, you know, if I can figure out how to work it into my current schedule, that is something that is being contemplated.
Beautiful. Love to have you back, sir. Okay, that having been said, in terms of truth, here's another truth. This is from Summit News. There's an Illinois hospital that created a comfort room for aborted babies to die in. And after the abortion procedure, they're writing that infants remained alive for hours after the abortion procedure. Eyewitness nurses have said that. They revealed how a hospital in Illinois has a comfort room in which aborted babies survive for hours outside the womb, and they're just left there to die. So Jill Stanek told a hearing on the Born Alive Act in Washington, D.C. that doctors at Christ Hospital in Oaklawn perform live birth abortions where the baby is allowed to die during or after the abortion procedure. The hospital provides comfort care for the babies for hours after the procedure by wrapping the infant in a blanket and keeping it warm until it dies. Parents of the baby are also allowed to hold it during this time. I'm not even going to read any more of that article. It is truly that despicable.
That's infanticide and it's murder.
I cannot think of any possible exemption from those exact words. Infanticide. Murder.
Now remember, Hillary Clinton used to talk about, abortions being rare, and all the rest of it.
Yes.
But now the Democrats have gone to the point where they are saying they're agreeing with, who was it? It was Pete Buttigieg, who said that life begins at breath. Remember that statement when he made that?
Yes.
So let's unpack what he's saying. So a large number of babies don't start breathing after they are born. They have to be prompted to breathe. The old smack on the behind.
Right.
We used to see in all the old movies.
Right.
What Buttigieg is saying is that if a 9-month-old, fully formed, fully developed, fully viable child is born, and that child doesn't begin to breathe on his or her own, that fully formed, viable child can be thrown into the trash can as long as that child has not taken its first breath. And not one Democrat who is running for president has rebuked him or criticized or refuted that statement. They all agree with him.
It's bad enough to make that statement. It's equally bad to not go out of your way to push back against that. And you're right. Where have the Democrats been with any answer to that whatsoever? And the answer is nowhere. Here's another story from the Federalist. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ralph.
I said silence acknowledges consent.
Yes, it does.
Criticize it, you agree with it.
It is tacit and clear, in my estimation, condoning that statement.
Exactly.
No pushback equals, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Exactly.
Sure.
And Donald Trump is the most pro-life president in my lifetime. Period. End of discussion.
Here's another article from the Federalist. In a court hearing, Planned Parenthood, this is an article from just last month, September 5th. It says, in a court hearing, Planned Parenthood employee admits to trafficking in baby body parts. Well, we were told that doesn't happen. Day one of the preliminary hearing for pro-life activist David Delayden kicked off at the San Francisco Superior Court with testimony from an abortion technician, a third trimester abortionist, and a vice president of the National Abortion Federation, who testified she doesn't know what a human tissue procurement company is or does. I'm that dumb. NAF Vice President of External Affairs Melissa Fowler also testified she recognized STEM Express, a human tissue procurement lab exposed in Delayden's undercover videos that is now under federal investigation, as a repeat vendor of her for-profit organization. NAF is a third-party abortion trade group. But wait. There's more. If you, and I told folks about this earlier, this applies to you, Ralph. This applies to anybody that's listening live. I get a lot of hits and people listening in podcast. I'm not going to do the bottom of the hour break. We're going to go straight into this. This is tough. I thought it was 5 minutes. No. This is 2 minutes of the most visceral audio you're going to hear. This is a guy named Dr. Levitino. He's talking about Planned Parenthood medical procedures. He's in the House Judiciary Committee. This was on C-SPAN. He's in the Rayburn office building. And he's testifying before Congress. I'm going to play it in a few seconds. Listen if you will, but do not say that I did not warn you. This is Dr. Levitino describing an abortion.
Dr. Levitino, we'll begin with you. Welcome. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. I only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to get right to it. Second trimester D&E abortions perform between roughly 14 and 24 weeks of gestation. Your patient today is 17 years old. She's 22 weeks pregnant. Her baby is the length of your hand plus a couple of inches. And she's been feeling her baby kick for the last several weeks, but she's asleep on an operating room table. You walk into that operating room scrubbed and gowned, and after removing laminaria, you introduce a suction catheter into the uterus. This is a 14 French suction catheter. If she were 12 weeks pregnant or less, basically the width of your hand or smaller, you could basically do the entire procedure with this. But babies this big don't fit through catheters this size. After suctioning the amniotic fluid out from around the baby, you introduce an instrument called a SOFR clamp. It's about 13 inches long. It's made of stainless steel. The business end of this clamp is about 2.5 inches long and 1/2 inch wide. There are rows of sharp teeth. This is a grasping instrument. When it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. A D&E procedure is a blind abortion, so picture yourself introducing this and grabbing anything you can blindly and pull, and I do mean hard, and out pops a leg about that big, which you put down on the table next to you. Reach in again, and pull out an arm about the same length, which you put down on the table next to you. And use this instrument again and again to tear out the spine, the intestines, the heart and lungs. Head in the baby that size is about the size of a large plum. Can't see it, but you've pretty good idea you've got it if you've got your instrument around something and your fingers are spread about as far as they go. You know you did it right if you crush down on the instrument and white material runs out of the cervix. That was the baby's brains. Then you could pull out skull pieces. And you have a day like I had a lot of times. Sometimes a little face comes back and stares back at you. Congratulations. You just successfully performed a second trimester D&E abortion. You just affirmed her right to choose.
Yeah.
How do you follow that up?
It's pure evil and it's pure wickedness. Period. End of discussion. But when you look back at what the Democrat Party has done over the past number of years, starting with its removal of God from its own platform, it's easy to see how they have gotten to this point. And anybody who claims to be a conservative and still supports abortion is no conservative at all. There's no such thing as I'm a fiscal conservative, but I support a woman's right to choose. No, you are not a conservative.
You can't listen to that and be and not be pro-life in some fashion. And I truly believe that's why people don't play this cut. You can't find Unplanned. You can't find Gosnell. Because if you're talking about emotions and you can't see or hear that, you're not a human being.
No, what you are is what the Bible refers to as a person who has been given over to a reprobate mind. Because you cannot be in your right God-given mind and support abortion. Especially after hearing
something like that. No. I'm done. I was done before that. I'm so done after finding and playing that. And I've kept it in my little archive if I need to play it again for people that are tuning in. Ralph Chitums, I have one more story. I don't want to end on a negative, but I'm going to look to you after this story for some affirmation and some positive. I realize I've kept you way too long. I thank you continuously again for being here so long tonight. This story just hit Texas of all places. This is not a story that I anticipated coming from Texas, but it's here, it's now, and if it's in Texas, it's coming to a state or a neighborhood or a city or a town or a county near you. And for people who think that you have in a leftist world or a Democrat world or a Democrat socialist world or a socialist world or a communist world, if you have any say and you cede power to them, your children will never be your own again. This is the story. This is from lifesitenews.com. And it's true. I just heard Glenn Beck addressing this story. So this is not a story, folks, that I just pulled out of my butt somewhere and decided that I'd make a rant and invite Ralph Chittums on to commiserate with me, because ain't it awful? No, this is happening right here. It's not thought about they're doing this. They're doing this. The headline is, Jury Rules Against Dad Trying to Save His 7-year-old from Gender Transition. I'm not kidding. A jury in Dallas, Texas has ruled against Jeffrey Younger, the father who's trying to protect his 7-year-old son James from chemical castration at the age of 7 via a gender transition. This means James' mother, Dr. Ann Georgilis, will be able to continue transitioning James into Luna, and now has full authority to start him on puberty blockers at the age of 7 and eventually cross-sex hormones at the age of 7. By the way, this little child is 7. The jury's decision likely means that Mr. Younger will be required to affirm James as a girl, Luna, despite his religious and moral objections, and will also be forced to take a class on transgenderism. This is your future under Democrats, folks. With a consensus of 11 of the 12 jurors, the jury decided not to grant Mr. Younger sole managing conservatorship over his 2 twin boys. They voted that the current joint managing conservatorship should be placed by a sole managing conservatorship, but that Mr. Younger should not be that person. Judge Kim Cooks will read her ruling on possession, child support, and the Dr. Georgilis other requests. Mr. Younger and Dr. Georgilis were in court last week fighting over custody and decision-making abilities for James and his twin, Jude. Mr. Younger argues his ex-wife is transitioning James, well, not just against his will, but against the boy's will. Dr. Georgilis, who brought the lawsuit, was asking Mr. Younger's possession schedule be altered to decrease overnight stays and to force his visits with the boys to be supervised. Dr. Georgilis brought the original modification suit to the court and did not request a jury trial. Mr. Younger, in his counter petition, asked for a jury trial. Since Mr. Younger requested the jury trial, the jury ruled on his specific request for sole managing conservatorship, and the judge ruled on all other aspects of the petition as brought by Dr. Georgilis. The little boy, by the way, says he doesn't identify as a girl. His mother keeps dressing him up, and he doesn't know why this is all happening. This is 2019 Texas, United States of America. Reverend Ralph Chittums.
This is what happened when you allow Alphabet Nation to bully America into submission. This is exactly what happens when Alphabet Nation, LGBTQP, bully the American people. And the only reason why Alphabet Nation has gotten this far is because the church was silent. The church didn't push back. The church didn't fight back. The church adopted a position that Jesus was, that it was zigzag Jesus. Peace, love, hope, and dope. We're all going to go along. We're all going to get along. And the church rolled over on its back, spread its legs, and let the LGBT community rub its belly and put it to sleep. And now this is what we get. We get, even the American Pediatric Association has determined that gender transition and chemical castration of prepubescent children is child abuse. The medical authorities have determined that what this woman is doing to this child is child abuse. But the lawyers are going ahead and doing it anyway. And this is what happens when the church does not speak up. When Christians don't speak up, when Christians don't get involved in politics, or they try to compromise, can't we all get along, instead of holding to the foundational Bible truths that God created us male and female. God doesn't make mistakes. There is no such thing as transgenderism. It's gender dysphoria, and no one has to go along with your delusions. You need help. You don't need affirmation.
Another reason that I like my chat room, Jack Alexander from chat says, you know what? And he's probably going to be forced to pay for the transition too. Well, bingo, Jack, because as Glenn Beck was saying, and he's going to get this guy on his show. God, I would love to get this guy on my show here. Is this guy was saying that, yeah, as a matter of fact, yes, the court is also saying that he will be forced to pay for everything, despite his vehement denials.
And the father will not be allowed to bring anyone around the child who will not affirm this foolishness. So if his grandmother or grandfather still wants to refer to him by his male name James and everything else, they are forcing everyone to buy into the mother's mental illness. What I want to understand is, why isn't this Munchausen by proxy?
Yes. I don't know if you're reading the same article I am, but I'm looking at a point now at a paragraph where it says, according to the Mayo Clinic, possible side effects of the feminizing cross-sex hormone therapy are, and there's a assload of them: a blood clot in a deep vein thrombosis, or in a lung, pulmonary embolism, high triglycerides, a type of fat lipid in your blood, gallstones, weight gain, elevated liver function tests, decreased libido, erectile dysfunction, infertility, high potassium, hyperkalemia, high blood pressure, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease when at least 2 other cardiovascular risk factors are present, excessive prolactin in the blood, hyperprolactemia, or a condition in which a non-cancerous tumor, abnormal of the pituitary gland in the brain, overproduces the hormone prolactin. Oh, that's just a few, but this is a great thing to do.
But here's another one, and because I read stuff, so I don't know why, I just happen to, that's what I do for fun. I was reading another medical journal that talks about using these hormone blockers on prepubescent children, especially boys, so their penises never fully develop. So when they go through the surgery to create a vagina, what they typically do is they hollow out the penis, turn it inside out, put it inside of the body cavity, and turn it into a vagina. Well, with these boys who are now being transitioned prior to puberty, there's not enough penile tissue to create a proper vagina or a proper substitute vagina, so they have to tap into the anal tissues of these boys to create a deep enough vagina. And what results in that? Now their, quote, vagina smells like an asshole.
You can't write stuff like this. You have essentially, when you said it's child abuse, I would submit it's much worse than that. You have affected a 7-year-old if this is allowed truly to occur. You've affected and destroyed the life of a 7-year-old from now until the point that he dies. And this child will always be affected by this.
And the suicide rate for these kids is way above average. Way above what you would expect in a normal population. And now there's even, and I was reading about this over the past couple of days, there is a movement now among teenagers that have gone through the surgery who want to reverse and go back to what they were before. And there's an organization that's helping these young people, for lack of a better term, detransition back to their original sex.
Which is why Ralph Chittum's This in and of itself is more of a terrible abrogation of everything that essentially humanity stands for. A 7-year-old cannot make a decision like this in and of themselves. If someone happens to be 18, they decide that they're going to transition, and at a young age, as you point out, a number of them are deciding, at 18, a number of them are deciding, I made a very serious mistake, and I need to do something about that. At the age of 7, this was not a decision that this boy had the ability to make.
A political decision that I believe the mother made to hurt the father.
Yes.
Because they through a divorce. Now, I have 4 children. I have 2 boys, I have 2 girls, 2 sons, 2 daughters. One of my sons, when he was younger, he asked for a dentist Barbie. The next year, he asked for an easy bake oven. That didn't mean that he wanted to be a girl. First thing first, the easy bake oven, he asked for that because his behind was just greedy and he wanted to make his own damn cookies. and we found out that he wanted the dentist Barbie because all he wanted was the dentist chair. Okay? Because he's so now if we had read that and said, oh, he's asking for these girl toys, so now he wants to be a girl, the same way one of the reasons why this woman says that her son wants to be a girl is because they were at McDonald's and he asked for the girl's Happy Meal toy. That's asinine. But what you've done is you have people now who are using these kids as pawns. And honestly, what this woman is doing, I believe, is Munchausen by proxy.
I would agree, and much as what you've said is true, this is a terrible thing to even think. And my guess is this is not even past, not one synapse in her brain has considered this as it's possible she has guaranteed that child to a suicide at some point, statistically speaking.
Absolutely. Statistically speaking, this boy is going to kill himself.
There's a bit of a light at the end of this tunnel. A bunch of protesters called on Texas lawmakers to pass legislation making it illegal for anybody under 18 years of age to begin a medical transition. And they argued, rightly so, children can't fully understand and comprehend the lifelong consequences of these decisions, and parents should not be allowed to make this decision for their children. It's important that they do.
But the government has been stepping in and allowing children to make all kinds of decisions outside of their parents' knowledge and consent. A 14-year-old girl can now get an abortion, and the parents never know about it, And unfortunately, the only time they're going to find out about it is when that girl bleeds out and dies on the abortionist table.
Yeah, or someplace else, or on the school bus, or on the school ground.
Right. So what we have, honestly, is a government that is being run by people who have no business running government because they have no moral center. And they have no moral center because they don't believe in God. Laws don't make people moral. Laws make people obedient. God makes people moral. And if we don't elect moral people, this is the kind of foolishness that we get.
These occurrences and instances are spotty now. But I want to end the show on a positive. And that's this. If you don't vote, folks, you're stepping away from your duty. If you allow the Democrats to get a stranglehold on the House and the Senate and the Oval Office, this will be endemic from now until they lose power, and by that time it may be too late. Republicans, conservatives, you cannot not go vote in November. This is just the tip of the iceberg and what is yet to come. But having said that, this is an illumination, a pulling back of the curtains of what could come but doesn't have to come.
Absolutely.
Because we already see that things are changing with Trump. Political power. It doesn't matter your paint job, but black Americans are coming to realize, the Democrats are not your friend. Conservatives are. And I don't care what your paint job is. Ralph Chittum's, you're a conservative. I like to hear you speak because you happen to be black, but more importantly, you have an incredibly salient and insightful viewpoint that the people that listen to this show need to hear.
Well, it's like our friend Lonnie Poindexter always says, my brothers are not those who have my paint job. My brothers and sisters are those who have my worldview.
Perfect.
That's it.
That is,
in a nutshell. That
is it in a nutshell. We got where we are today when good people stepped back and allowed, let me put it this way. Ralph Chittum's, I'd be interested in your thought on this also. Frequently, after being an observer of humanity for many, many, many years, I've discovered that sometimes decisions come down to this: weak versus strong. What I mean by that is, well, let's just use parents for example. It's easy to say yes to a child. It's hard, it's difficult to say no to a child. And sometimes it really does get down to something as simple as that. No and yes. No is not a bad word. Yes can sometimes be one of the worst words to use. But there's hope. There's hope. Ralph Chittum's, please bring us home on hope.
There's always hope because I believe what the Bible tells us. The Bible says that all things work for the good to those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. If we walk in God's truth, if we walk in God's light, if we walk unafraid, if we walk in truth again, in the end, God's perfect will be done. And we can look throughout the biblical record and we can find where people did all manner of evil things, but in the end, it all worked out for the good. But we as Christians have to do our part. We are the arms, we're the legs, we're the hands, we're the eyes, we're the ears of God on this planet. And if we do our part, yes, even in the darkest of situations, those situations will work out for the good because God's will prevail. There's always hope. We just can't give up the fight.
That's the most salient and important part. We cannot give up the fight. Ralph Chittims, thank you ever so kindly for being here tonight. I did not primarily intend to ask you to hold over. Now it's, only 5 minutes before 1 a.m. where you are. So I have to thank you for all the time that you devoted to speak to me tonight, and for all the people that are listening, and the chat room that's been listening, and all the people that have been interacting in the chat room, folks that are listening in podcasts. Thank you ever so kindly for doing so. Ralph Chittims, I hope you get your show back. I hope you find the opportunity in your time schedule to do that, because you are an extremely important voice. You need to be back on SHR. Your voice needs to be heard. I will have you back on the show. And again, thank you for your views, your insight, your remarkable wit. Thank you, sir, for being here tonight.
It's my pleasure. Anytime.
Folks, that was Reverend Ralph Chittims, and this is BZ. One programming note. I will not be on the Chat Show tomorrow night, and I'm not going to be back on Thursday night. I am going to be gone for a while. I'm not coming back until November 7th. There are various aspects, various things that I need to address and take hold of. So I will be gone for the next 2, maybe 3 weeks. I am anticipating coming back on November 7th, which I believe is Thursday, because I'm going to be speaking to Andrew Pollock, who lost his daughter, Meadow. And he'll be speaking for maybe a half hour, maybe an hour or so. That's an interview that I don't think that you're going to want to miss. His daughter was killed in the Parkland shooting. Never once has Andrew Pollock laid the blame at the doorstep of the tool, the firearm. He lays it instead on society. He has great insight with regard to that. He and I are very congruent in our thinking on this. Gavin Newsom just passed a law enabling this to occur. Moreover, here in the state of California, spelled with a K. Thanks to everyone for being here tonight. Thanks for listening. And it's time for me to go for a while.
Monsieur has unlocked!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelins Berserk Bobcat Saloon right here on the SHR Media Network. If you want to contact me, you can find me on Twitter at BZEP, at BZEP, and also on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. Promotional consideration is by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and the Boeing Company. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. And tiaras are by My Little Pony. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, with whom I shall be consorting in less than an hour. And thanks again to Ralph Chittims for spending almost 2 straight hours here in the saloon. Unprecedented. Thanks so kindly to everybody for listening live. Thanks for everybody being in chat. Thanks to the people who are listening in podcast. Thanks to American truckers. You keep America moving. Folks, God bless. Take care. Have a great weekend.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children. Good night, Dad. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Good night, Jim Bob. Go to sleep.
Good night and good luck.